Welcome back. In the previous video we designed this area, this battle map, and now is the phase of inking, which is one of the most satisfying phases because it really brings out your battle map. It's also pretty much a requirement if you want to scan it in and print it out later, because pencil lines often don't show up that well. It also helps players visually figure out what they're looking at a lot easier and faster. So let's get to it. I always start with the biggest lines first. So the edges of the cave are going to be the thickest, so they can easily be discerned as the edges of the battle map, which you cannot cross. So let's get to it. I may speed up some inking in this process because it can be a little bit tedious. It's fun to do, but I don't know how much fun it is to watch it. Let's get going. While I am inking these areas, often I create or add or change a bit of the geometry that I have sketched already. Like, it's important to notice here that these are cave walls. So like I said in the previous video, they are quite harsh and geometrically shaped. There are harsh lines, harsh corners, because it's rocks. And rocks aren't often soft and smooth, unless they are eroded that way, of course. But in our battle maps, at least in my battle maps, I prefer them a bit harsh. So you can see I'm not really having a standard approach. I'm just going along where I want to. What looks good at the moment, which areas I want to fill in first. So here's the first thing. This is that secret door. We don't want to use the same thickness for that, because it has to be seen as something else. There we go. To the outside. And we go across here. Like, what is really important is variation. You see, sometimes the edges and the breaks in the straight lines follow each other up quickly. Other times you have a long line. And sometimes it's even a bit more organically, more flowy. And add all that together and it looks more natural. It's just something you have to practice, and eventually it feels good and you will do it automatically. Right? You can see this is the same lines because this area is not accessible. Now we have to choose which other areas are not climbable but go from floor to ceiling, which is this one and this one for certain. So we can start there. They already also need the same line thickness. Now I'm not quite sure about that one or that one. I think this one is going to be floor to ceiling as well, because otherwise it's a pretty big area that's not supported. So we go like that. And then I'm done with the first line thickness. I go to my next, which is, oh, by the way, let's check that. This one is 0.9 to 1.3 millimeters thick. And the next one we're going to use, it says, it's a bit faded, but it's supposed to say 1.0. And yeah, this is 0.9 to 1.3, but in practice it's a lot thicker. I mean, you have to be really shallow if you wanted to make it less thick than this one. Following things that are important at the moment, I say you have these levels, which should be pretty thick, and these rocks. For the water I usually use a thinner line because it also conveys a bit of a more gradient, which, water isn't, if it's flowing through this cave, it's not in a channel. So it's a bit wavy, if you know what I mean. And you can also show that a bit better by using a thinner line. All right, let's go. I'm going to create these levels in the same way as the walls. Try to do it varying size, varying length of the stroke, breaking it off here and there. I don't really like that part, but that's what happens. It's just details. And this rock over here. This rock is also going to be this thickness. So it's this one and this one. That level around it. I sometimes do these stairs. Whether or not they're naturally made doesn't really matter. The same thickness, but I'm going to do them a bit thinner. Just shows the difference that much easier. Now these rocks, they shouldn't fit perfectly, but close to. Perfect is good, I think, personally. And here's another edge. Right, that's that one. Time for the next, which is, I have the 0.5, which is 0.45 millimeters. So it's half as thick as the one we used before. I do have more in between, by the way, but I imagine not everyone else has those in-betweeners. And even though this one is 0.50 and this one is 0.45, they differ a lot. You can easily see that difference. But I'm going to use less thickness. Sometimes I use all of them, but it's not necessary. So, going for the stairs next, because those are also important. You can see I'm going by importance of visual importance, which things you need to spot first. Is basically what I'm doing. Obviously, it's, also a matter of opinion what's important. But I feel like my opinion is usually right when it concerns these things. At least according to me. Well, that's probably redundant. Never mind. Alright. I think I'm going to add one more stairs. And this one more step. Because I like that a bit better. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be the same amount of steps on both sides, but I do usually prefer it. This can be sloped slightly downwards, or these steps are just a shorter distance apart in height. Doesn't really matter. I'm also going to go for a few of the smaller rocks this time, like these and these. So rocks that are still quite big, but not as important as the others. So this one is probably going to be in the water a bit, and that's fine too. Like you see, I haven't sketched out these rocks. You don't really have to do that. I did at first, but at some point during the process, during the experience, you get better at it, and you feel confident enough to create those rocks without sketching them out first. I don't really have anything to say at this point, so just adding a few rocks here and there. At the entrance is also fine. These rocks are mostly for aesthetic purposes, I suppose. You could say they provide half cover. I would allow that as a DM, but they're not that important for the battle in particular. So when there's a rock somewhere, I imagine it has fallen from the ceiling or is half eroded into the ground. So usually it's accompanied by more rocks. But it's not necessary. You can have only rocks if you want. Oh yeah, for this. So this part is where the source of the water comes from. So I haven't really told that in the design process, but I'm usually make it a small inlet, and I imagine the water is coming from out of that rock, like a bit of a waterfall. But we're going to draw that with a smaller size. Now, I think with this size, we're also still going to draw the chest, as that one is the most important item on here, and the outlines of the beds. This is again the same thing. You could detail those beds with pencil first if you want, but I've drawn so many of these beds, it's not necessary anymore for me. So I can get straight to the inking process. I'm going to detail them a bit more with smaller lines, but you know, the variation in those things is pretty cool, I think. So I did say the next time I was going to use is the 01, which is 0.25 millimeters. Let's see, there we go. But I am going to do something else. If you don't have another size, that's fine. You can go with this one. But I prefer to add one more size in between, which is 0. Yeah, could you focus please? Yes, there we go. 0.35 millimeters, which is the 03. Yeah, that's confusing, I know. I'm going to do the outlines of these chests with that. Don't worry about making your lines straight. In fact, if you would use a ruler for all these lines, that would suck. Basically, it would suck. You know, the fact that there are minor mistakes, I lost the word. It's not straight, it's not perfect. That makes it better. It gives your map a lot of character and warmth. I imagine it's similar to people who prefer vinyl to CDs because they scratch a bit, and that warmth really adds something for some people. I don't listen to vinyl myself, but I can imagine that is one of the selling points for them. So I haven't sketched out that fire here. I don't think I'm going to lit the fire, so in that case I add a few small rocks around it, and then add the sticks, the logs, with a smaller diameter. Alright, so this 03, I'm going to use that for the water. Yeah, I think so. So the water doesn't have any of these harsh breaks, harsh corners. So you have to draw it flowy, like water flows. Insert Karate Kid quote here. There we go. So just make it as organically as you can. Just flow with the paper. Make sure you're not doing it on a surface that has a lot of, texture to it itself, because that's going to translate to the water. You don't necessarily want that. So this is where we are now. Now I'm going to erase some of the pencil lines before I go into further detail. And that detailing is going to be in another video. Thanks for watching.